Picture the greatest empire the world has ever produced. Its culture is dazzling. Its philosophy, brilliant. Its art, jaw-dropping. Every civilization it touches eventually drops its old gods and starts wearing its tunic. Every single one, except one small people who carry no visible gods at all, refuse every bribe of pleasure and prestige, and somehow keep surviving. Who are they? And why can't you break them? That question haunted the ancient world for centuries. The answer is a story so improbable, so charged with betrayal, courage, and sheer stubborn identity, that Hollywood has barely scratched its surface. Go back to the 3rd century BCE. A new superpower is rewriting the map of the known world. Alexander the Great, barely 30, crosses the Hellespont in 334 BC with 32,000 infantry and shatters armies that had millions of soldiers at their command. The Persian Empire, one of the mightiest machines of conquest in history, simply ceases to exist. By the iron law of winner-take-all, the Jewish people living in the land of Israel pass under Greek rule. Here's the part that surprises everyone. The Jews don't fight Alexander. This is remarkable, given that these same people had fought enemies just as formidable before, with zero hesitation. Instead, the high priest of Jerusalem leads a formal procession out of the city gates to welcome the Macedonian king. Alexander, expecting resistance, is charmed. He looks at a people who carry no golden statues, no idol-laden chariots, no visible representation of their God, and he is astonished. He grants them internal political and religious freedom. For a conqueror, that's practically a love letter. But Alexander isn't just building an empire of territory. He wants an empire of the mind. His plan to Hellenize the world is both sophisticated and audacious. Instead of the sword, he uses culture. When culture is too slow, he uses intermarriage, ordering his officers and soldiers to take local wives, blend peoples, produce children who belong to both worlds. Within 10 years, he founds 25 Greek cities across the Middle East, including the legendary Alexandria in Egypt. The Greek hoop skirt is pulled over the entire Near East. Here's where it gets complicated. Greek culture lands on most of the Near East like a thin coat of paint on mud, shiny on the surface, touching nothing underneath. The peasants remain illiterate. The philosophers are mostly Greek. For 600 years, Greek thought dominates the region, and yet not a single original idea in art, science, or philosophy emerges from the fusion of East and West. Not one, except from the Jews. This is the counterintuitive fact you didn't see coming. The Jews, who reject Hellenism as a religion, absorb it as an intellectual toolkit. They master the Greek philosophers while resisting Greek philosophy as a lifestyle. They take Greek ideas, add a Jewish dimension, and give them back transformed. The Greeks, without fully realizing it, eventually emerge wearing a garment made of Jewish thought. It's called Christianity. The Jews, meanwhile, wear a philosophical tunic labeled Talmudism. Two peoples borrowing from each other for 6 centuries, each convinced the other has terrible manners. History is rarely tidy. Alexander dies at 32. His vast domain is immediately ripped apart by his generals. 3 of them carve up the empire like a roasted animal at a feast. Antigonus takes Greece. Seleucus seizes Asia Minor and Syria, founding the Seleucid Empire. Ptolemy grabs Egypt and the land of Israel. And here the Jewish story enters its next chapter. The Ptolemaic kings operate on a simple philosophy: live and let live. Pay your taxes, and we leave you alone. Under this arrangement, the Jews enjoy remarkable self-governance. Their chief administrator is the high priest, whose power is balanced by the Sanhedrin, a body acting as both Senate and Supreme Court. Pause on this fact. For centuries before the birth of Christ, the Jews have already built a legal system on presumption of innocence, the right to counsel, the right to confront accusers, protection against self-incrimination, and the prohibition of double jeopardy. Europe, by contrast, still uses trial by ordeal 1,000 years later. The resemblances between ancient Jewish jurisprudence and modern American law are more than coincidence. The Jews prosper. They spread across the former Alexandrian Empire. The Greek geographer Strabo writes in the 1st century BC, his own words, that the Jews have penetrated into every state, and it is difficult to find a single place where they have not become dominant. But underneath that prosperity, a war of ideas is brewing. Not a war of swords yet, a war of lifestyles. Hellenization doesn't arrive as a military order. It arrives as fashion. Between 9 and 5, Jewish and Greek merchants meet in bazaars. Jews start using Greek names, the way immigrant families today anglicize their surnames. They wear the Greek tunic the way people worldwide now trade traditional clothing for jeans and a t-shirt. Greek words creep into Jewish religious writings. Synagogues begin to resemble Greek temples. Then comes after 5. Jewish and Greek youth meet in gymnasiums, theaters, and cabarets. Nude wrestling becomes common. The Greek Epicurean philosophy, which teaches that the gods don't intervene in human affairs, that morality is superstition, and that pleasure is the only rational goal, spreads through Jewish intellectual circles like fire through dry grass. The very word for an Epicurean, apikuros in Hebrew, becomes such a feared curse that it survives in Jewish vocabulary to this day. Ask yourself, when a culture is under this kind of soft pressure, how do you resist without becoming rigid and isolated? That was the central question of Jewish identity in the 3rd century BC. It's not entirely different from questions many communities face right now. The resistance takes shape in a political movement called the Hasidians or Pietists, not a religious cult in the modern caricature. A coalition of people from every social class who see cultural assimilation as national suicide. Their leaders thunder against idolatry and licentiousness the way the ancient prophets had 5 centuries earlier. And while this internal struggle plays out, an external power struggle between the Ptolemies and the Seleucids over the land of Israel has been simmering for 125 years. Finally, Antiochus III, known as the Great, wins that contest and takes the land of Israel from the Ptolemies. He actually gives the Jews even more internal freedom, recognizing their talent for self-governance. But he has a grandiose vision to reunify the entire former Alexandrian Empire under his banner. He marches toward Egypt. He runs directly into the Romans. One look at Roman legions and Antiochus turns around. He never forgets that humiliation. Now enter his son. Antiochus IV takes the throne in 176 BC after his brother is murdered. He calls himself Antiochus Epiphanes, God made manifest. That title tells you everything about his ego and his blind spots. He inherits his father's wounded pride and his father's dream of total Hellenization. He isn't personally anti-Jewish at this stage. To him, it's a matter of principle. But the road to catastrophe is often paved with principles applied without wisdom. A Jewish priest named Jason, a committed Hellenizer, bribes his way into the office of high priest, a position of supreme religious authority purchased with cash and court intrigue. Jason wastes no time. In 12 months, he accomplishes what 125 years of foreign rule had not. He opens the gates of the Jerusalem temple to pagan rituals. Greek statues appear in the holy sanctuary. Jewish priests officiate at Greek cult rites in Greek costumes. Naked Greek games are performed in the temple courtyards. Jewish envoys are sent to pagan festivals as official representatives of Jerusalem. Then it gets worse. The man Antiochus later appoints to replace Jason, a figure named Menelaus, isn't even from a priestly family. He simply outbids Jason for the job. The highest religious position in Jewish life is going to auction. Rage builds across every class of Jewish society. The Hasidians swell with new recruits. Then a rumor ignites everything. It claims that Antiochus Epiphanes has been killed in battle with the Romans. Hasidian leaders believe it. They strike at the Jewish Hellenizers with stunning violence. Every Hellenized official and priest appointed by Antiochus is thrown over the temple walls, a drop of 100 feet from which, as one ancient account dryly notes, none recovered. The statues follow them over the edge. A systematic purge of all known Hellenizers begins. The problem, the rumor is completely false. Antiochus is very much alive. He has just suffered the same humiliating retreat from Egypt as his father, forced out by Roman ultimatum. He returns to Jerusalem not as an administrator, but as a conqueror in fury. He massacres 10,000 inhabitants without pausing to ask which side they were on. New statues fill the temple. New priests are installed. Pagans are invited to settle in Jerusalem to dilute the Jewish population. Then Antiochus crosses a line from which there is no return. Out of wounded pride, out of sheer spite, he outlaws the Jewish Sabbath. He forbids circumcision. He demands that Jews sacrifice to Greek gods. He isn't trying to govern a people. He's trying to erase an identity. What happens next is one of the most remarkable stories in all of Jewish history. In a small town outside Jerusalem, a Greek official approaches an elderly Jewish priest named Mattathias of the Hasmonean family and demands he perform a sacrifice to Greek gods. Mattathias refuses. The official insists. Mattathias, old, outnumbered, draws a sword and kills the official on the spot. That single act of defiance sets off a war. Mattathias flees to the hills with his 5 sons. The Jewish population rises in spontaneous mass revolt. His sons become known as the Maccabees, from the Hebrew word for hammer, because they deal hammer blow after hammer blow to Seleucid armies. This is the birth of something the ancient world had never seen. The first religious war in recorded history, fought not for land or plunder, but for the right to live and worship as themselves. The Seleucid Greeks are baffled. In every other war they've ever fought, when you defeat an army, occupy a capital, smash a temple, and seize a king, the people submit. That's how it works. But every Jew seems to carry his temple within him. As long as the people live, their God lives. And these people will not stop living on command. Antiochus sends a small expeditionary force to put down what he assumes is a minor nuisance. The Maccabees annihilate it. He sends a major army. The Jews shatter it. So confident had Antiochus been of victory that he brought a battalion of slave auctioneers with him and circulated price lists for Jewish slaves throughout the empire. His soothsayers had misread the stars. In 164 BC, the Maccabees recapture Jerusalem. The temple is purged of every idol and rededicated. From that rededication is born Hanukkah, the Feast of Lights, still celebrated by Jews today. A small lamp burns for 8 days on oil that should have lasted 1. The miracle is remembered not because it was easy, but because nothing about it was supposed to be possible. The war with the Seleucids lasts 25 more years. 4 of the 5 sons of Mattathias fall in battle. But the Maccabees keep winning. Antiochus Epiphanes dies never having sold a single Jew in his slave markets. His successors first offer full religious freedom. The Jews, flushed with victory, demand complete political independence. In 143 BC, Simon, the last surviving son of Mattathias, signs the peace treaty. A new kingdom of Judah is established. Against every conceivable military, cultural, and political logic, Jewish history survives. Again, what Antiochus could not do with armies, and what Greek culture nearly did without lifting a sword, is still being attempted in different forms in every generation. The absorption or erasure of a distinct people, a distinct identity, a distinct relationship with God. The Maccabees answered that attempt not with a theology lecture, but with action, sacrifice, and a refusal to vanish. The question this history poses to every person who hears it is a deeply human one. What would you refuse to surrender, even at the greatest cost?